What the hell happened to my stores? Victor Malone muttered as he stared at the latest customer service report on his laptop, the numbers jumping off the screen like warning lights. 19 fast casual restaurant locations. Built from scratch. He'd started with a food truck in a busted-up Chevy in his 20s. Worked double shifts, burned through 2 failed concepts before this one stuck. Now, 15 years later, his brand was thriving at least on paper. But lately, complaints were stacking up. Not about the food. About the people. Cold service. Long waits. One customer said she was told to walk her lazy behind somewhere else when she asked for a fresh salad. Another said they were charged for extras they never got. Victor had kept his distance the last 2 years. Corporate expansion, investor meetings, system-wide tech rollouts, it had all pulled him away from the day-to-day grind. He didn't know the new hires. Some GMs he'd never even met. That's what bothered him. He set down his coffee and opened an employee scheduling file for Store 17 east side of Tucson. The complaints from that place were the worst. 2 workers had quit in the same week. One wrote in their exit interview, "Management's dirty. Customers are clueless. I'm not risking jail for $12 an hour." Victor didn't like riddles. He liked answers. So he made a decision. 2 days later, he walked into Store 17 under the name Doug, posing as a new trainee. His disguise was clean, a dyed buzz cut, thick glasses, sleeves rolled up to hide his tattoo, and a slight limp from an old motorcycle accident, he exaggerated. He wore a cheap apron with a fake trainee badge clipped to it. No one suspected a thing. It helped that none of the staff had ever seen him in person. "Doug, you're shadowing Javier today," said the assistant manager, a tired woman named Nina, who barely looked up from her tablet. Victor nodded. "Cool with me." The kitchen was chaotic. Grease-slicked floors, a fryer that squealed every few minutes, and coworkers who barely talked unless it was to bark orders. Javier, a fast-moving line cook in his 20s, showed him the ropes. He didn't smile once. Victor played dumb, asking questions, messing up orders, pretending to struggle with the register. He watched closely. One thing stood out: most of the workers weren't lazy. They were just tense, like they were walking on glass. On his second day, during the lunch lull, Victor followed 2 employees, Javier and a stocky cashier named Marcus, outside to the back alley where they took breaks. He stayed a few feet behind, pretending to text on a cracked phone. The alley was quiet except for the muffled hum of traffic. Then he heard it. "You gave her the discount code?" Marcus asked, flicking ash from his cigarette. "Yeah," Javier said. "She's cool. She knows not to say anything." Victor's eyes stayed on his phone. His stomach turned. Marcus chuckled. "Man, we already pulled in like, what, 400 last week off fake comps. Easy money." 550, Javier said. "And that's just from us too. You know Crystal's doing it too. Guy at Register 3's in on it now." Victor froze. Javier leaned against the dumpster. "It's clean. Hit comp button, fake allergy excuse, charge the customer, keep the cash, toss the receipt. GM, don't check. He's too busy banging that girl from Store 11. They both laughed. Victor's hand tightened around his phone. His jaw clenched. He wanted to tear off the fake badge and say something, but he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he stepped back inside and went to clean the soda machine, hands shaking. That night, in his motel room, he stared at the ceiling. His company. His stores. People were stealing from customers, pocketing cash, and laughing about it. He thought about firing them all the next morning, but a voice in his head said, "Not yet." If this was happening here, it could be happening elsewhere. He needed to know who else was involved. Who was honest. Who still gave a damn. And he needed to see it himself. He was staying. The next morning, Victor arrived 15 minutes early and stood outside the employee entrance, sipping burnt coffee from a vending machine. The sun hadn't cleared the horizon yet, and the air carried that dry, metallic chill unique to desert mornings. No one else was there yet, except the opener, a short woman with a limp and a hoodie pulled tight over her head. She unlocked the door without looking at him. "Name's Raina," she muttered, pushing through the entrance without a glance back. Victor followed her inside. The lights buzzed on in patches, revealing a kitchen still sticky from the night before. He noticed she didn't head to the office or check the safe. She went straight to the prep sink and started scrubbing pans like her life depended on it. "Do you always open alone?" he asked, pulling on gloves. Raina didn't look up. "Only when Felipe's on night shift. He never closes right. Leaves me with all this crap." "You say anything?" She shook her head. "Tried once. Got told if I didn't like it, I could transfer to another store. But I don't have a car. So here I am." Victor turned toward the prep fridge and found a half-filled container of old lettuce shoved behind a box of thawing chicken. He made a mental note. The health standards were sliding, but no one seemed to care. By 9, the store had filled with staff. Crystal, the shift lead, who barely made eye contact with anyone, took over the register. Marcus and Javier rolled in 10 minutes late, laughing about something on Marcus's phone. Nina didn't confront them, just looked up, muttered something under her breath, and went back to counting cups. Victor was assigned to dishes again. He didn't argue. He wanted to observe. From the back sink, he could see the front counter, the expo line, and the hallway leading to the office. At exactly 10:17, Victor saw something that made his stomach turn. A man in a blue hoodie stepped up to the counter, whispered something to Crystal, and handed her a folded receipt. She tapped a few buttons on the POS, opened the till, and slid a $10 bill into his palm. No food exchanged hands. No order was placed. He walked out the front door without a word. Victor dried his hands, walked over to the register, and said, "Hey, was that guy a refund?" Crystal didn't flinch. "Don't worry about it." "But he didn't. I said don't worry about it. You're not on register." The tone wasn't defensive. It was dismissive. Like he wasn't even worth lying to. He stepped back, returned to the sink, and watched her slide another 10 into her back pocket before closing the drawer.
Clear as day.
That afternoon, while wiping down the prep table, Victor overheard a conversation near the walk-in cooler. It was between Nina and someone on speakerphone. She hadn't noticed him in the back, hidden behind a half-stacked bread rack. "I'm telling you, if you want the hours, you have to keep your mouth shut," Nina was saying. The voice on the other end was tense. "But he shoved me. In front of customers. You said you'd file the report. I said I'd handle it. And I did. He's got a temper, I know. But we're short on closers." There was silence. Nina added, "If you tell corporate, they'll open a case, and you'll end up transferred. That what you want?" Victor didn't move. His hands were still gripping the towel, heart thudding. Someone had been assaulted on shift and Nina had buried it. For the sake of shift coverage. That night, he skipped the motel. He drove to a nearby gas station, parked behind it, and sat with the engine off, the heat fading from the cab. He wrote down every name, every detail, on a legal pad he kept in the glove compartment. He listed Crystal,
Javier,
Marcus, Nina. He drew a line under them. Then he added Raina, with a question mark. She worked hard, didn't talk much, but she saw things. And she hadn't said a word to anyone. The next morning, he got to the store early again. Raina was already there, again alone. But this time, she wasn't scrubbing. She was standing at the back door, looking out into the alley with her arms folded. "You good?" Victor asked, stepping inside. She didn't answer at first, just shut the door quietly. "Some guy was out there," she finally said. Didn't say anything. Just stood there with his hoodie up. Watched me for like 5 minutes. Victor's stomach tightened. "You call anyone?" She shook her head. "No point." He left. He didn't press her. But something was off. And he was beginning to see the full picture. This wasn't just about money being skimmed. There was fear here. Quiet, constant fear. By mid-afternoon, the store was packed. The rush hit harder than expected. They were short 2 people. One had called out sick, the other just didn't show. Victor jumped on the register to help, and that's when things got worse. A woman with 2 kids ordered 3 meals, paid cash, and waited by the pickup counter. Victor saw Crystal hit the comp button again before closing the ticket. Then she slid something into her pocket. Again. When the woman came back 10 minutes later, asking where her food was, Crystal rolled her eyes and said, "It'll be out when it's out."
Victor stepped in.
"Let me check the screen." He pulled it up. The order had been deleted. "No record," he said. "You sure it was Crystal?" The customer looked confused. "She's the one who took my order."
"Hang on.
"I'll get a manager." Nina came out, annoyed. Listened to the woman, looked at the screen, and then turned to Victor. "You must have messed up the ticket. Just ring it in again. On the house." Victor stared at her. "It was already paid for." "Then ring it in and comp it. We're not arguing over $10. The customer was watching, holding her kids' hands. Victor rang the meals again, but he saw the look in that woman's eyes. She knew something wasn't right. After she left, Nina leaned in close. "Don't question me in front of customers again." He nodded slowly, then turned back to the register. His jaw was locked so tight it ached. Later, while restocking the soda syrups, Raina passed him a folded napkin. No words, just a glance. Inside, she'd written, "They've been doing this for months. I've seen Javier take boxes home. Crystal does fake refunds. Nina lets it happen. If anyone talks, hours get cut or you get shipped to store 11. Don't trust anyone, but maybe Jordan, he's night shift. Only here Fridays." Victor folded the note and slipped it into his sock. He didn't look at her, didn't nod, just kept working. He stayed through close, helped mop, took out trash, watched Javier pocket a bottle of sriracha and 2 bags of cheese, watched Marcus short the till by $15 and write down a fake comp. No one said a word. On his way out, he passed Nina in the office. "You're catching on," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Learning a lot," Victor replied, his voice flat. He walked to his car, sat behind the wheel, and gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Tomorrow, he'd bring in someone from corporate.
Quietly. No announcements.
Just another inspector passing through. He'd seen enough. And someone was getting fired. Victor parked 2 blocks away the next morning and walked in through the front as Doug. Same apron, same fake limp. The plan was already in motion. He'd made 2 calls the night before, one to his director of field operations, another to HR. Both were instructed to arrive separately, unannounced, posing as routine auditors. They'd blend in, observe, take notes. No one would know who they were until it was time. Inside store 17, the energy was off. Marcus was pacing near the ice machine with his phone clenched in one hand. A quiet tension hung in the air between the clatter of prep trays and the low hum of the refrigerator compressors. Victor clocked it immediately. Something had shifted. Someone was nervous. He headed to the back where Raina was slicing tomatoes. She didn't look up. "You all right?" he asked, keeping his voice low. She slid a tray aside. "They know someone's coming. Don't know who. Everyone's on edge." Victor nodded once. "Keep your head down." She didn't answer, just kept working. At exactly 10:20, the first auditor walked in. A tall woman in a charcoal blazer carrying a clipboard. Didn't introduce herself to anyone, just asked if she could observe the line. Nina, clearly rattled, said yes but trailed closely behind her like a shadow. 10 minutes later, the second arrived, a man in a polo shirt and jeans claiming to be from Ops Monitoring. He asked to review the inventory logs. No one questioned it. Victor kept his distance, playing the part. He wanted to see how everyone reacted under pressure. By 11, the cracks were showing. Marcus dropped a full tray of fries and didn't bother remaking them, just scooped them back in with bare hands when no one was looking. The clipboard woman saw it and quietly jotted something down. Javier was slower than usual, missing steps, glancing at the office every few minutes. Crystal stayed planted at the register, barely speaking, eyes flicking between the auditors and the security camera dome above her. Victor watched every detail. At 11:45, the lunch rush hit. Long line. Register beeping nonstop. Victor jumped in to run food while Reina handled prep. Nina kept disappearing into the office, clearly trying to avoid direct interaction. Then it happened. A man in a wrinkled shirt stepped up to the counter, muttered something to Crystal, and handed her a crumpled bill. She glanced toward the clipboard woman, hesitated, and then tapped a few buttons. The till opened. Victor saw it. So did the auditor. The woman stepped forward. "Can I see that transaction, please?" Crystal stiffened. He just needed a refund. He didn't have his receipt. The auditor leaned in. What item was refunded? Crystal didn't answer. "I need you to print the last 3 receipts." I can't. The printer's jammed." The auditor turned to Victor. "Doug, could you please show me how the register works?" "Since your training." Victor stepped behind the counter.
Sure.
He tapped the screen. "Even if the printer's jammed, we can reprint from the transaction log."
Just go here, he paused.
Then scrolled back 3 entries. The last one was marked as a comped combo meal no refund. No customer name. No allergy note. Victor turned around. "I think we're done pretending now." The room went dead silent. Even the friar hissed a little quieter. He unclipped his badge and dropped it on the counter. "My name is Victor Malone. I own this company." Crystal stepped back like she'd touched a live wire. Marcus dropped the tray he was holding. Javier froze mid-step. Nina stepped out of the office, eyes wide. "Sir, I didn't know you were." "You didn't," Victor said. "That's the problem." He turned to the auditors. "We're shutting down this location for the day." Reina looked up from the prep table, unsure whether to keep working. Victor raised a hand. "Reina, you can stop. You're not in trouble. None of this is on you." She lowered the knife and stepped back slowly. The clipboard woman stepped forward. "We've documented enough. HR's already pulling timecard records and transaction logs." Victor nodded, then faced the staff. "Marcus, Javier out. You're done here. Your actions have been documented. Theft, manipulation of transactions, and creating an unsafe work environment." Neither moved. "Now," Victor said. They dropped their aprons and left without a word. Crystal didn't move. "You're complicit," he said. "We have footage. You lied to a corporate auditor. Repeatedly pocketed cash. You don't get a second chance. Leave." She opened her mouth, thought better of it, and slipped out the front door. Victor turned to Nina. "You covered for them. You buried an assault report. You intimidated staff. You failed every standard we have. You're finished." She stepped forward, hands slightly raised. "You don't understand the pressure. We're short-staffed. I did what I had to do to keep this place from collapsing." "No," Victor said. "You kept it running so you wouldn't get blamed. And you let good people suffer. You're done."
She didn't argue.
Just walked to the back, grabbed her purse, and left through the rear door. The silence afterward was thick. No one spoke. Reina stood near the prep sink, eyes locked on the floor. One of the part-timers from the afternoon shift had wandered in early and was now frozen by the walk-in cooler, unsure what world he'd just entered. Victor turned to Reina. "You can go home early. You'll be paid for the full shift. Starting next week, you're being transferred to Store 3. New manager. Better team." She blinked, processing. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You earned it," Victor replied. "And thank you for telling the truth." She grabbed her things and walked out the front, not hurried, not afraid. Just steady. Victor exhaled and turned back to the auditors. "Close the store for the rest of the day. Post a sign. Closed for system review. Keep the cameras running. Inventory everything. And send me a report by morning. They both nodded and got to work. Victor stayed behind. He walked the floor slowly, taking in the kitchen, the scuffed tile, the broken clock above the soda fountain. None of it surprised him anymore. He'd seen where neglect leads. He sat in the corner booth near the window, the one that still had a sticker peeling from the edge. Outside, the sun was beginning to shift overhead, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. He wasn't angry anymore, just clear. This wasn't about a few bad apples. It was about what happens when leadership disappears. When people like Nina are allowed to run things unchecked. When the owner forgets what it feels like to mop floors and slice tomatoes and get screamed at for something that wasn't your fault. He pulled out his phone and started drafting a memo that would go out to every GM by nightfall. There would be mandatory retraining, unannounced store audits, a new confidential hotline for employees to report misconduct. And, most importantly, every regional manager would be required to work one shift per month in store. Not to supervise. To participate. No more distance. No more excuses. And anyone caught mistreating staff or customers.
Gone.
Immediately, he looked toward the register. The screen now sat idle, still lit up with the last transaction. He stood, walked over, and shut it off. Victor returned to store 17 2 weeks later, this time not undercover, not in disguise, and not alone. A team of 5 accompanied him. The newly appointed district manager, 2 HR representatives, a training coordinator, and a quiet man from compliance who carried a tablet but said very little. They arrived just before dawn, entering through the back to avoid drawing attention. The store sat quiet, sterile. It had remained closed since the day Victor called the shutdown. Inventory had been audited, cash drawers reconciled, and every shift from the past 6 months reviewed. The evidence had been overwhelming. What disturbed Victor most wasn't the scale of the theft, though it was significant, but how openly it had flourished. The culture had failed, and that was on him. He walked the kitchen slowly, noticing the changes already underway. The back wall had been repainted. The broken prep sink had been replaced. A new camera had been installed above the register, this time with audio. The office door had been removed, a temporary measure, but symbolic. No more closed-door decisions. "Raina's here," said the training coordinator, glancing up from her clipboard. Victor nodded. "Bring her in." She entered quietly, still wearing a worn hoodie, but standing taller than before. She looked around, cautious but not afraid. He gestured to the newly cleaned booth near the window. "Let's talk." They sat across from each other, sunlight beginning to filter in through the blinds. "I wanted to thank you again," he said. "You didn't have to speak up. You could have done what most people do, kept your head down." She hesitated, then said, "I almost didn't. I thought about just quitting. But I needed the job. And I kept waiting for someone to notice. No one ever did." "You were right to expect more from us," he said. "And that's going to change." She didn't reply, just studied him carefully, like she was still deciding whether to believe him. "I'm not transferring you to another store anymore," he added. "I want you to stay. You're being promoted to assistant manager here." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she just stared at him. "I've never managed anything," she said. "You've already been doing it," he replied, "keeping things running when no one else did. You didn't need a title to lead." She looked down at her hands, nodding slowly. "In a few months, if things go well, we'll talk about full manager training." The door opened again, and a young man entered. Tall, clean-cut, with a clipboard tucked under one arm. "That's Jordan," Victor said, nodding toward the new arrival. "He's your new GM. Heard you had his back on Fridays during closing. He asked to be placed here." Raina's expression softened. "He's solid." Victor stood. "I'll let you two get caught up. We'll be reopening in 3 days. You'll have 2 full days of training, and we're bringing in temporary staff to cover the gap until we rebuild the team." He stepped into the kitchen, where the compliance officer was finishing a walkthrough with the district manager. "We're clear," the officer said. "All systems reset. New passwords. New cash handling protocols. External audits scheduled monthly for the next 6 months." Victor turned to the district manager. "And the hiring?" "We've screened 6 candidates already. No one with ties to the previous staff. Background checks are clean. We're taking our time." "Good." He walked to the front counter. The register screen had been updated, newer model, fingerprint logins. No more shared codes. Next to it, a small laminated card was taped to the counter. Every customer, every shift, every time, respect, integrity, honesty. It was simple, but it was a start. By early afternoon, the new team began arriving for orientation. Victor stayed to greet each one. A college student looking for part-time work. A single mom trying to get back on her feet. A culinary school dropout who just wanted to cook again. Each was brought into the break room, handed a packet, and told the same thing by the training coordinator. "This is not the store it used to be. We're building something better. And you're part of that." Victor watched it happen, but didn't interfere. His role was changing. Less about control, more about clarity. Later that evening, with the sun dipping low and the parking lot clearing out, Raina found him by the dumpster enclosure, inspecting the new locks. "I meant to ask," she said, "what happened to the guy in the hoodie from a few weeks back?" Victor glanced at her. "We identified him. He was tied to a vendor one of the former employees brought in without authorization. We've cut ties with that vendor. Legal's handling the rest." She nodded. "Just wanted to know it wasn't being ignored." "Not anymore," he said. She hesitated. "You think this place will actually stay clean?" He didn't answer right away. Just looked out toward the street, where the neon sign had been replaced with a cleaner version of the logo, brighter and crisper.
"It will," he said.
"Because you'll make sure it does. And because we're watching now." "Really watching?" She nodded and walked back inside. Victor remained in the lot for a moment longer, the dry air humming with the quiet of a day well spent. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a reckoning. One that had taken too long. But it was real. He looked at the store, lights on now, voices inside going over training schedules, new protocols. It felt different. Not fixed, not yet, but honest. He pulled out his phone and opened a file labeled Leadership Roadmap. At the top of the list, every executive must work 1 shift per quarter in store. No exceptions. He added a line beneath it. Every decision must start and end with the people closest to the work. Then he put the phone away and walked back inside.